The House will come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Representative Kelty, House District 16. Mr. Shebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Armagost, Bacon, AML Bacon,
Excused.
Barone, Byrd, Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Bradley, Brooks, Brown, Representative Brown,
Excused.
Caldwell, Camacho, Rep. Camacho, Carter, Clifford, DeGraff, Duran, English, Representative English is excused. Espinoza, Ferre, Representative Ferre,
Excused.
Froelich, Garcia, Garcia Sander, Gilchrist, Gonzalez, Hamrick, Hartsook, Jackson, Johnson, Joseph, Kelty, Leader, Lindsay, Linstead, Luck, Representative Luck,
Excused.
Lukens, Mabry, Marshall, Representative Marshall,
Excused.
Martinez, Morrow, Representative Morrow,
Excused.
McCormick, Pascal, Phillips, Puglisi, Richardson, Ricks,
Present.
Rootnell, Ryden, Sirota, Representative Sirota,
Excused.
Smith, Soper, Rep. Soper is excused. Stewart K, Stewart R, Representative Stewart R is excused. Story, Rep. Story is excused. Sukla, Taggart, Titone, Representative Titone, Valdez A, Rep. Valdez is excused. Velasco, Weinberg, Wilford,
Excused.
Winter, Woodrow, Woog, Zokai, Madam Speaker.
Here. With 56 present, 9 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Kelty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I move that the Journal of Sunday, April 6, 2025 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of House Joint Resolution 1025.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of resolutions. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Joint Resolution 1025.
House Joint Resolution 1025 by Representatives Duran and Puglisi, also Senators Frizzell and Roberts, concerning the recognition of the week of April 6th through 12th, 2025 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
Members, we are proceeding to business. I'll ask for conversations to cease. Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move House Joint Resolution 25-1025 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Schiebel, please read our resolution.
Whereas crime and the threat of violence affect individuals, families, and communities in profound and varied ways, often leaving lasting physical, emotional, financial, and social challenges. And whereas, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics Criminal Victimization 2023 report, U.S. residents aged 12 and older experienced approximately 6.4 million violent victimizations, and households experienced approximately 13.6 million property victimizations in 2023. And whereas Colorado's Victims' Rights Amendment ensures crime victims are treated with dignity, fairness, and respect, and have the right to be kept informed of and involved in the criminal justice process. And whereas America's crime victims' rights advocates have had a powerful impact on educating the nation about the devastating effects of crime and victimization, and the need to provide support and services to individuals and communities hurt by crime. And whereas, with the unwavering support of their communities and victim service providers behind them, survivors are empowered to face their grief, loss, fear, anger, and hope without fear of judgment and feel understood, heard, and respected. And whereas this year marks the 33rd anniversary of the enactment of the Victims' Rights Amendment in the Colorado Constitution, which passed on November 3rd, 1992 with the approval of 82% of Colorado voters. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 75th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the Colorado General Assembly, recognize the week of April 6th through 12th, 2025 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week in Colorado. And during this week and throughout the year, we honor crime victims and those who serve them. And that we encourage the citizens of Colorado as individuals, communities, and part of the nation to seek justice and have compassion for crime victims.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This morning, along with my colleague, Minority Leader Puglisi, we bring you House Joint Resolution 1025. This resolution recognizes National Crime Victims' Rights Week that began yesterday, April 6th, and will conclude this Saturday, April 12th. National Crime Victims' Rights Week is an annual observance that brings communities together and raises awareness about victim rights and services. This is an opportunity to honor victims and survivors and recognize organizations that have been fighting for victim rights for decades, forge new partnerships to better serve and support victims of crimes, and strengthen existing partnerships. National Crime Victims Week has been held in April every year since 1981. Last year, we brought you Senate Joint Resolution 18, recognizing April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Today, we recognize all victims of crime, whether they are victims of property crimes or crimes against a person. We must, however, pay particular attention and give recognition to those individuals who are victims and survivors of crimes against a person. Many crimes we consider violent crimes. Today, we recognize victims of murder, assault, vehicular homicide, domestic violence, and so many other crimes, and yes, including sexual assault.
Madam Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do have with us today victims and survivors and advocates for National Crime Victims Week in Colorado. I'm going to ask you all, they're on the House floor and in the gallery, if you could please stand and be recognized. During Crime Victims Week, victims, survivors, advocates, law enforcement, and others will hold events throughout this country to raise awareness and provide support for those who have faced victimization. For so many, however, they're the victims of the most serious crimes, and they can no longer be with us or their loved ones. So if we could just take a moment to recognize those people, I'd appreciate it. This year's National Crime Victims Week theme is kinship, which is something that I love. A lot of the bills I've done have been around kinship. But kinship is a family. It's a family of survivors where advocacy can really begin. And today's resolution serves as a call to action for those people to come together and help support each other. We've passed legislation, and I appreciate the work that the Majority Leader and I have done since my time here to help survivors and victims. Again, there's still more work to be done, and we need to do that together. We have to do more. They deserve better. They deserve more, and I hope that we can continue to come together in Colorado in a bipartisan way to make sure that we protect victims and survivors of crimes. So thank you so much for standing today, and we ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1025. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Clifford is excused. Please close the machine. With 59 ayes, 0 no, and 6 excused, House Joint Resolution 1025 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Ricks, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for conference committees to report.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for conference committees to report. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1056.
House Bill 1056 by Representatives Lukens and Bacon, also Senators Roberts and Henriksen, concerning local government permitting of wireless telecommunication facilities.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the Conference Committee for House Bill 1056 be permitted to go beyond the scope of the differences between the chambers.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We would like to add a timeline to the tolling amendment on House Bill 1056, and to do so, we need to go beyond the scope of the differences between the chambers. We ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is to allow the Conference Committee on House Bill 1056 to go beyond the scope of the difference between the chambers. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote? Representative Ricks, you are on mute. Representative Ricks is excused. Please close the machine. With 52 ayes, 7 no, and 6 excused, the motion to go beyond the scope is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move the following bills be made special orders today, Monday, April 7th, 2025, at 10:20 a.m. House Bill 1105, House Bill 1097, House Bill 1195, and House Bill 1062.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders for today, Monday, April 7th at 10:20 a.m. Representative Clifford. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Clifford will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there's a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen on I Legislate in today's folder on your box account. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that House Bill 1174 be laid over until tomorrow.
House Bill 1174 will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1105 until after House Bill 1195.
House Bill 1105 will be moved until after House Bill 1195. Thank you. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of House Bill 1097.
House Bill 1097 by Representatives Gilchrist and Froelich, also Senators Michelson, Janae, and Doherty, concerning measures to support children in out-of-home placements and family-based settings through the creation of placement transition plans.
1 second. Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 25-1097 and the Health and Human Services and Appropriations Committee reports.
To the committee report.
During the
Representative Gilchrist, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the Appropriations Committee, we made additional amendments that eliminated the fiscal note by removing a requirement for the Colorado Department of Human Services and reducing the training for caseworkers. And we ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Gilchrist. We have two committee reports. My apologies. To the Finance Committee report.
No.
Sorry. Take it all back. To the Health and Human Services Committee report. Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the Health and Human Services Committee, we made several amendments to the bill that were an effort to make sure that the legislation wasn't overburdensome for counties. With all of those amendments, we worked to make the bill less prescriptive and provide opportunities for flexibility because we do understand that not all transitions are the same. I move L008 to the Health and Human Services Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
1 second while we get that displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment was a request from the counties. It basically includes what would be in a transition plan and identifies who would be communicated with, and we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L8 to, my apologies. Representative Luck, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would very much appreciate if the bill sponsors could walk us through each one of these changes. This has been a heavily amended bill, and trying to follow what you're doing is a little bit difficult this Monday morning. So if you could give a little more explanation, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the question from my colleague. So I will walk us through L008. So as I said, this better defines how we communicate with interested parties in the transition plan, so amending providers and the child, so someone who is a provider to the child, and a placement by someone known to the child to the extent possible, so ensuring that we're also communicating with the placement to the extent, and with that caveat, to the extent possible, and then also including communications in pre-transition and post-transition. And again, this is a request. We worked very hard with stakeholders to make sure that we included all of the things that would make this less prescriptive for counties. And we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L8? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L8 to the Health and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Representative Froelich to the Health and Human Services Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L009 to House Bill 25-1097 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion. 1 moment for us to get it displayed. That is displayed. Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment enables the Colorado Department of Human Services to promulgate rules to help guide the counties in creating transition plans, and we urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L9? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. To the bill. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Representative Winter, AML Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 25-1097 mandates the Colorado Department of Human Services to develop standardized placement transition plan template for children moving between out-of-home care settings. While this bill aims to create consistency in these transactions and transitions, it presents several challenges for rural communities. I think the biggest thing is the strain on rural resources. It makes it really hard in our counties with fewer staff and financial resources. Implementing detailed transition plans requires additional time and personnel. Reaching out to stakeholders on this, that's just one of the main concerns is as we put more and more legislation on them from the capital, it spreads our resources even more thin. And there's some counties that have tiny little offices, and they're just afraid that this is going to overwork the workload for them. The administrative burden, this actually came from one of the people that is in one of my smaller counties. Their roundabout way of stating mandating specific transition procedures might inadvertently slow down placement process for rural children needing timely placements, such as delays could prolong periods without stable care. The one-size-fits-all approach, I know that you ran an amendment to allow to be input, but at the end of the day, that's not guaranteeing that the rural voices will be heard, and we have a history of not being heard a lot. So I think that there's some concern around that. The financial strain on local budgets, because as we keep putting these mandates down, these smaller counties are spreading the work out even more, and I think that they have to hire more staff. And right now with what we're seeing, not only is the state broke, but a lot of these counties are broke too, because unfortunately the states have hooked counties on money like a drug, and they hold it above their heads. Well, now there's no money to hold above their heads anymore. So a lot of these counties, when they look at these mandates coming down, it scares them to death to know that they don't have the funds to run their county as it is now, and now we're going to put more of a workload on their administration, on their staff, and they're going to put a bigger hit in their budget. So given these factors, it's essential to consider the distinct challenges faced by rural communities and assess whether House Bill 1097 mandates might inadvertently hinder the very outcomes it seeks to improve. Putting kids in homes, everything takes longer. In rural Colorado, we were discussing a communications bill in here where they wanted the permitting process to be something like 60 to 90 days. Well, we can't even pull those kinds of meetings together in 60 to 90 days. I'm looking at county commissioners that represented small counties, and it takes time to get this stuff done. So I just think that this could put delays in putting kids in proper homes. I think that it's going to add to everything I told. Administrative strain, staff strain, budget strain, and at the end of the day, the kids are going to be hurting. So with that, I'll be a no vote.
Representative Hartsook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I'm looking at a fiscal note that's dated back on February 6th. It's talking about 60 grand and half an FTE. And yet in the bill, and this is where with all these amendments trying to catch up here, the bill is talking, it's telling DHS to develop and implement a plan. So I'm assuming the funding is going to DHS. So question number one is, what are we sending down to the counties? Because you're telling all the counties we have to have this transition. There's a whole phase of going through here. So if they're supposed to be developing a transition phase, where's the coordination that is going on and the feedback? We haven't heard anything from our counties, but between the state and the county, or are we looking at a mandate across the board where, again, top driven down, where the state is going to tell counties, this is the plan, this is how you need to implement it. When we start looking at costs that are involved, the counties, we're already short in a budget. We've put in a lot of workload on the counties. We're sitting here talking about personnel services. We're talking about capital outlay. There's a lot of money, state expenditure, and yet we're requiring counties to do, at least as I read this correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're requiring the counties to do lots of things, and I don't see the funding going down to the counties. So where is that funding, and what are we just talking about them doing? And then two, back to the main picture of it, where we're sitting here and saying, develop, and on the surface, it sounds like a decent idea, develop and implement a placement transition plan. But what is the identified issue, the problem that we're looking to satisfy? mean, because as I'm looking at this, we're saying, hey, go out and do these great things, but what is it we're trying to fix? Because if we're looking at fixing placement across the board, I gotta believe it's gotta cost more than $60,000. I mean, that's statewide, $60,000. Either it's a minuscule problem or it's gonna take a whole lot more money than $60,000. So what is the problem that we're trying to identify and fix here? And the funding seems either inadequate at both state level, but certainly at the county level. So if we can get some clarification on that, A, what's going on in the counties, and B, what's that funding issue, and is there going to be another fiscal note? Thank you.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you so much, and thank you to our colleagues for raising these concerns. I'm sure we all understand the delicate dance between the state and the counties, and I can tell you that we and my co-prime in particular have been working incredibly hard with the counties to get to a place where there's a level of flexibility, but we're still getting to the main point, which is also what you were asking. And that is this problem that a foster child averages 8 placements in their life. That's a tremendous number and a tremendous amount of trauma associated with that. So by having smoother transitions, there's 2 goals. One is to lessen the transition trauma associated with that, but also the goal is to lessen the number of transitions by prepping the new placement with information from the old placement, which may be the family. The other piece of this that is critical to the work in child welfare that a lot of folks in the well right now have been working incredibly hard on is to increase the number of kinship placements. And so when you have someone who's in non-kinship care and they're transitioning into kinship care, you want that transition to be as smooth and informed as possible. So this is also informed from incredible activity and work in this space from my co-prime Rep. Guilford. So we have just case after case after case where letters with information about what the child needs and wants and likes and everything from their stuffed animal doesn't make the transition. And just the incredible sadness of a year later getting that letter that says they have this challenge, they have this, even medical information isn't making the transition. So that's the point of the bill. The counties have been we tried to work as hard as we could with the counties to sort of impress upon them the intent of the bill while allowing for flexibility of implementation. And so we got them to a good place with the amendments, and we hope that we can get to a yes vote on the bill.
Everybody, if you can use the microphones really well when you're in the well, but the other thing is, given that there is so much detailed discussion on this bill, please keep it down. Thank you. Representative Sukla.
Oh, did you want that? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, coming from a past county commissioner, almost every county has a lawyer that is designated just for this right here. They're on the ground, they are with the families, and they have a goal. The goal is to eventually get the kids back to their birthright parents. Sometimes that can't happen, but if the parents say they're on drugs or whatever and they get cleaned up, we try to get them back there. I would consider this bill an unfunded mandate on the counties and actually would be harming the goal of the counties to get those children back to their birthright parents after they get cleaned up, if it's drugs or divorce or whatever it is. And I believe this bill is unnecessary and harmful to the kids and the counties. Thank you.
Representative Bradley.
Mr. Speaker? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, it's Monday. Well, I appreciate the bill sponsors working with the counties. The counties still are just not in agreement, and I'll read you what my county sent me. The 1097 amendments are out. Unfortunately, they do not address our most significant concerns of 1, putting best practices into law so there's no room for flexibility as practice wisdom changes. 2, adding to caseworkers' workload. They are already severely understaffed, and this is just going to create more workload. Creating a template that will result in duplicative documentation, which we brought up as well. Making the process so prescriptive that there is little room to adapt for each set of circumstances, as no 2 cases or kids are ever exactly the same. The mandated meeting to develop the plan with all parties, current and future providers, and the child is also problematic. So then I wrote down a ton of notes. CCI said the balance between what should happen and what should be law, it's a one-size-fits-all. It is so loud. It is so loud. I can't hear myself think.
Members, please.
Thank you. CCI said it was a one-size-fits-all. It's too prescriptive. It's a law versus a rule or other processes for flexibility. Department of Human Services said they agree with the intent, but the need to plan to transition is not flexible enough for unique individuals. The trails role and template is too restrictive. Counties practice transition. They already have plans in place. Boulder County Human Services, I think, said it best. This is today's solution is tomorrow's problem. They said Family and Children's Services from Boulder would add 4 hours of work for each caseworker per child and can delay the transition of the child. So now we have a safety feature going on. If you don't have enough caseworkers and you're adding 4 more hours to the caseworkers that are already there, then the transition of the child between placement can be delayed and they're stuck in foster care even longer. The attorney for Arapahoe County for Kids says it creates a conflict with the courts for DNN cases. It's too prescriptive and rigid statute will create court cases. It will impact the safety, but same transition plan still must be followed. What will happen to the kids if they are dropped off by foster parents? Elaine Castillo, former caseworker, said this will cause delays for transition. You need to include tribal and Native American families, which I don't see in any of the amendments. They said the bill is patchwork and they need to go after the real issues at hand. The State Department says we promulgate the rule versus law. Transition requirements are all under one setting. And it just goes on and on and on. All of the main departments came and said, this is going to be a big problem. It's going to add to the caseworkers' workload and it's going to delay the transition of kids to their next placement. So without new amendments, I don't even know what these 2 new amendments do. None of us were sent these amendments to Health and Human Services and haven't been able to reach out to our counties. I would urge a no vote so far. Thank you.
Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also heard this bill in committee, and I am always leery of anything that becomes a one-size-fits-all, because certainly our 64 counties are individually unique, and I feel like each county has the right, the responsibility, and the capability to develop their own transition plan for whatever circumstances they have. The smaller counties have fewer people involved, and so I don't see this as a necessary bill. I think it could simply ask the welfare departments of every county, do you have a plan when you need to move a welfare child from one welfare foster parent to another? And that's it. And we don't have to spend money on it. It's not something that we, as the state, need to be in the business of taking care of. So I urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Garcia Sander.
Why, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am still looking for some feedback from my counties, but what my good colleague from Douglas County just said is accurate. We didn't actually get the amendments. I got the amendments through somebody from my county, and they weren't sent to us, so I'm still noodling through those, but my county said that these amendments make it clear that you don't need a transition plan in an emergency situation, but they add rulemaking, and they do not strike the meeting requirement on page 4, and they do not strike the overly prescriptive sections for the timeline to transition and the post-transition communication requirements, pages 6 through 8, all of which were part of bare minimum changes counties still wanted to secure. So I was looking at pages 6 through 8, and there's a lot here, and I can understand why the counties think that this might be too prescriptive, because blanket regulations don't work for everybody. So I'm just going to go over those. Section 19-7-101, the individuals who must be involved in the pre-transition communications whenever possible include 1, the child's parent, 2, the child's provider, 3, the child's attorney, 4, the child-appointed special advocate if the child has been appointed one, 5, the child if the child is 12 years of age or older, 6, individuals important to the child who will be involved in the transition or may be helpful in making the transition successful, and 7, current service providers as appropriate. Service providers may include medical providers, mental health providers, or educators. A timeline to transition the child to a new placement, which must include notifying the child, current provider, and future provider before the move, so the child may spend time with the future provider or spend time with service providers, school supports, or other connections who may be lost after the move, and establishing an alternative timeline if necessary that allows a child to move immediately if A, there are safety concerns for the child's physical or emotional safety in the current placement, B, the current provider gives notice that they can no longer care for the child in the transition timeline must be shortened, C, the child requests an immediate move to a new placement, or D, the court orders a change in placement to occur sooner than a transition plan would allow. A plan to physically move the child to new placement, which must include, there's a lot of musts, shalls, moving, let's see, 1, moving the child to the new placement by someone known to the child to the extent practicable, and 2, notifying the previous provider that the child arrives safely to the new placement. A framework for post-transition communications, which must include 1, providing a status update on the child to the previous provider. Unless there is a safety concern in providing a status update to the previous provider, a party objects to sharing confidential information, or a court order prohibits the release of information to the previous provider. And 2, communicating with the current provider and previous provider if requested by the previous provider prior to the transition to determine how the transition went and if the current provider or previous provider needs any support. The department within existing resources shall create a training on the importance of placement transition plans that is recorded and made available on a training system that can be accessible statewide. The training must focus on placement transition plans and on individuals who have lived experience with placement transitions. Again, there's a lot of musts, shalls here, and I think counties are just a little hesitant. I think I wrote it down, it's sitting at my desk, and I keep reminding myself every day, not just in here, but in life, today's solution is tomorrow's problem. I think that we need to think carefully about what our counties are telling us might be potential problems, listen to them, and try and address those. And so I think we need to consider what that back and forth feedback is before we accept this and move it forward in the Senate. Thank you.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In follow-up on what was just discussed about these specific requirements, I'd like to share a story with the body coming out of my district. There is a multi-generational family who has fostered children and then moved to adopt them for years. The grandparents did it when they were parents, the parents are now doing it, and the grandparents are doing it. It's a family that very much is about kids and foster kids. It's all that they do. They love these little guys. And there was a couple who, as I understand it, had something like 6 kids in 7 years. And all 6, or 5 of the 6 of those children, the 6th child is, as I understand it, a newborn or very young, still with the biological parents. But those 5 kids were placed with this one family and have lived with that family for the duration of their life, basically. The oldest, again, being 7 years old. Well, they were moving to adopt, as I understand it, please forgive me if my facts are a little off. There's a lot going on. But my understanding is the youngest 3 children were in process of being adopted. And everybody in the system, the government, county folks, the folks who are charged with making sure that the interests of the kids are taken care of, and this couple, all were on board with having the parental rights terminated and this family being able to adopt. But at the end of last year and beginning of this year, all sorts of things shifted. And they found that they found themselves in a situation where the court ordered that the 3 youngest kids not be returned to their biological parents, not be put in another foster care system here, but actually be sent to a foreign country. They are not citizens of that foreign country. They're American-born, American citizens, and they are being ordered, 3 of the 5, to be separated from the only parents they've known and from their 2 siblings, to be sent to another country because that's where their biological parents are from. Their biological parents are not legally present in the United States, in order to be placed with an aunt that they've never met. When we talk about an individualized placement transition plan must include these things like identifying opportunities for the child to visit or contact the future provider prior to the transition. Does that mean that the county has to find opportunities for this couple to take these 3 kids to that foreign country to first meet with that aunt before placing? What's contemplated in the minds of the sponsor in terms of identifying opportunities? Is it sufficient for the county to say there is no opportunity for this family to go and travel to that place and meet those folks? What about identifying opportunities the child may have to maintain contact with the current provider with primary consideration to the mental, emotional, and physical needs of the child, and taking into consideration the preferences of the child and the future provider? Now, I dare say that the decision of the court to mandate this separation doesn't take into account those things. So this is a grievous instance for those kids. It's going to be a trauma for them to be uprooted from the only nation and language and family they've known and placed somewhere else entirely, right? New country, new language, new people, new everything. So how does the county satisfy that? Determining, when applicable, how a child will maintain connections with siblings when siblings are not placed together. Does the county have to come up with some sort of plan that says these kids need to be either brought back on a regular basis, or there needs to be some sort of FaceTiming or something such that they're able to maintain contact? My desire would be for this whole situation to be rectified and this not to be the story of this family, but it is the story of this family. And from what I'm hearing, this is actually something that's going on in places across the nation. And so how do we, through this policy, give thought to those real world situations? What does it look like? Not only for the county and for the person trying to satisfy this as relates to those kinds of instances, but more importantly for those kids. So if the bill sponsors can help me, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague for, first of all, highlighting a horrific story that I am aware of. And I wish, without speaking to the details of that story, because I don't know all the specifics, I wish that was uncommon, and it's not. And this bill is a reflection of those circumstances, when kids are moved without a plan. And so in that circumstance, my hope would be, if this bill was enacted, that the group would get together and make a decision on how do we transfer, even if you agree or disagree with the court's decision, which we could go round and round on that. If the kids are moving, so how are we going to make sure that they move in a trauma-informed way? That if there's an opportunity to meet the new placement, that that happens. If there's an opportunity for communication between current placement and future placement. and that the child or kids are involved in that process. I think I've said this before on the mic, but I am a foster and adoptive parent, so I know this very, very well and just had a text message from a colleague last night explaining another transition that happened poorly and traumatized kids. That is what this bill is doing. It is requiring that we do this better for the kids in our care in this state, that they deserve to have a plan when they move from foster placement to foster placement to home, or foster placement to kinship. And I urge an aye vote.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that response and where this bill is stemming from. I still am curious, though, so if I'm the county official tasked with making these plans, what does that look like for that family, right? Like, identifying opportunities for the child to visit or contact the future provider. So identifying opportunities for these kids to visit, to have a phone call, like what, I guess I just want in specifics. I deal in hypotheticals and specifics a lot more than these vague kind of, we want this goal, and what does it look like in this instance if I wanted to be faithful to these terms? In your mind, would that just be, we identify that you could make this call, or we expect that over the course of the next 3 weeks as we wait for that flight to come that you're on, those kids are on, that you have a call with them every 3 days for a total of 30 minutes a time? I mean, is it granular in terms, or is it just going to be general, hey, we identified an opportunity, and then the foster parents that currently have custody may or may not have to actually satisfy those things? Like, help me understand how this looks in practice.
Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague for the question. So, two things. That's why we included the word individualized throughout the bill. That was a county request. And I understand the reason we did that, and the reason I was okay with that, is because we understand that every case is different. So we didn't want to prescribe you have to have one meeting, or you have to have a placement-to-placement meeting. We didn't want to prescribe you have to visit 3 times. We didn't want to prescribe you have to do X, Y, and Z, because, and exactly to the point that you were just describing, like that is a unique circumstance with an out-of-country placement. And so we wanted to provide flexibility, but some ground rules on ensuring that you're discussing these elements before you move a child.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this discussion. I think exactly as my colleague said, there's an umbrella concept with we're trying not to get to that granular level of specificity to allow for individualization, but in acknowledgement that enhanced communication is needed because it does not exist now. There is not a way for this systemic way for this information to be called for to be shared. And so let's put these plans in place so that we know how to contact the previous placement, and that the previous placement can also be told that the child that they cared for get an update on how they're doing and if there's any need there, all to lessen the trauma, all to lessen the difficulty of the transition, and all to lead to less transitions, and as we said before, family placement and kinship placement prioritized.
Representative Luck, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsors. I just want to restate what I'm hearing, because that's a good way of making sure we're all on the same page. The bill sponsors are not actually prescribing that individual children meet with or connect with their future provider, or that they maintain contact, or that they have maintain contact with the current provider moving forward, or maintain contact with the siblings. It's more a conversation to say, let's sit down and talk about all of these things that will likely impact that child, and see if any of these boxes need to be checked as relates to that child, such as to minimize the harm that could exist if we don't have the conversation. Is that fair? I'm getting a yes or a correct with a yes nod. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Representative Herzog.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we finally get back up here. Thank you to the sponsors. I think we can all agree that we certainly need to find better ways for foster kids in the transition. I absolutely agree with that goal. That's very admirable. That being said, my concern is not with the goal of what we're doing, but how we're paying for it. Now, I know just in having some conversations with the sponsors a few moments ago, they're looking at some additional amendments. My big concern, thank you very much. My big concern is what we're sending down to counties. So in this plan, or in this bill, we're telling the counties, that the state's going to create it, but the counties are going to have to do some execution, because they're going to be the ones that are involved with it. On the fiscal note, when it talks about future impacts will be addressed through the annual budget process. Because right now we've got 60 grand going for it the first year, and yet then it's dropping down to 50 grand thereafter. And we're already kind of in an agreement, and yet the fiscal note says zero. How is that possible that you can have a zero fiscal note when we're asking counties to do things that requires manpower and resources? That doesn't make any sense. So when I look at the new fiscal note that was just given out, I don't understand how we can go from 60,000 down to nothing, and yet the state has to develop things. The state's got to create and develop and implement a program. The counties have to do the same. All of that requires resources, personnel, funding. So how can we now be at a zero fiscal note? Thank you.
Representative Bradley. And members, a new fiscal note is what they're passing out right now on this bill. That's the pink sheets that are coming around. Representative Bradley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hot off the press, everyone, on a Monday morning. So workload will increase for CDHS, who came and testified against this bill, to develop the caseworkers' training and support counties with the development of placement plans, beginning in fiscal year 2026-2027, to the extent that county spending on child welfare service increases to develop new transition plans, the state share of spending for child welfare will increase. It is assumed that the impacts will be addressed through the annual budget process based on actual county spending. And then if you go to local government, currently when a child is determined by courts to need home placement, county caseworkers develop a placement plan based on the child's needs and available placement options, considering several factors and involving relevant stakeholders in the process. I mean, our counties don't want this. However, the placement and transition process currently varies by county and by caseworker, and beyond the initial planning, there is no standardized requirement for what information must be collected when a child moves between placements. So beginning in fiscal year 2026-2027, the bill requires that county departments of human services develop placement transition plans whenever a child is moved to a new placement. According to the CDHS data, there were approximately 3,400 children in out-of-home placements in the state from January 2024 through September 2024, with each child experiencing an average of 1.3 placement changes per year. While each transition currently requires a caseworker to facilitate the move, so that's really important right there. While each transition currently requires a caseworker to facilitate the move, and we have 3,400 with 1.3 placement changes. In rural Colorado, some of you guys without current caseworkers to facilitate the needs, this is going to impact the caseworkers that are already there. This bill will increase the workload for county caseworkers to create detailed transition plans and meet with all parties to the case for each movement, including those between foster homes, kinship care, and returns to the child's family, which are currently not required. The extent of the impact will vary by county depending on the number of children requiring out-of-home placements, the number of transitions experienced, and the hourly rates for caseworkers. assuming it takes up to 2 hours, which the caseworkers told us it would take up to 4 hours, so this is underestimating by 2 hours, to develop a transition plan, an average of $42 per hour for a caseworker. This would increase county costs on a statewide basis by $371,000. So I would multiply that by 2, and I would say that's going to be about $700,000 of an unfunded mandate to our local counties, because the caseworkers that came to testify said it would take 4 hours of work per transition, and now you have 3,400 kids. So I would hesitate to say this fiscal note's going to be an unfunded mandate of about $750,000. And for our counties that are struggling in $1 billion shortfall, this is an unfunded mandate that the counties are not in favor of, DHS is not in favor of, and I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am currently in contact with the family that I mentioned. And so one of the questions that they have is, will the current placement have opportunity to contribute into this conversation? And mind you, I'm trying to balance all of the different amendments and what have you, so you might have already addressed this. But on page 3 of the pre-amended version, it does say that a county department child welfare caseworker shall create an individualized placement transition plan. I'm not seeing in my quick read that there's anything that says in here in consultation with the current folks, but in hearing you, I feel like you're saying that that will happen. Can you point me to the language in the bill that assures my constituent that that's actually part of this?
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to clarify. Yes, the whole point is smoother transitions between current placement and next placement in communication with current placement and next placement.
But is that in the bill? Is the language in the bill?
Page 6.
Just 1 second.
Representative Luck.
Oh, I'll just, as I try to find it here without a recess, let me see. A plan, okay, starting relevant part on page 6, maybe section B, a plan for pre-transition communications between individuals who have relevant information for the transition. Is that what we're talking about? The pre-transition communications must be child-centered, trauma-informed, and in compliance? Is that where we're pointing? Must include, but that doesn't fall under Section 8. Uh-oh, I only have 7 on this. I only have 7.
You're looking at a pre-amendment.
Yes, I have, but there's only, oh yeah, okay. Sharing information between the current provider and the future provider. Yeah, what I guess I'm pointing to is not just the sharing of information, because that in my mind is, hey, this is their birthday, this is their favorite color, this is what they're allergic to, or they really hate, what have you. That's how I read that. What I'm kind of more focusing on is that the creation of this plan is delegated solely to the caseworker. Is there an opportunity to say caseworker in conjunction with the current placement or in conjunction with other stakeholders who have relevance, such, I'm just wondering.
Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague for the question and the detailed read of the bill. I appreciate that. Yes, I think it is important that they would, that the caseworker would consult with all relevant parties. And I think that it's also important to note that that is the role of the caseworker, is to manage those conversations. That is how they do treatment plans. So this is a very reasonable way to implement a plan like this. I also want to just address the 4-hour issue that came up in the hearing. That has been addressed by these amendments, and it is no longer a 4-hour time crunch on caseworkers. And I urge a yes vote.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, just in honor of my constituent, I want to put on the record that I think, while we can't touch it now because it's a settled question, at least in this chamber, though it could be taken up in the next, I do think that it's important that there be specific language in this authorization such that it does provide a space for the involvement of the current provider, because the whole premise of this bill is that there's not enough communication between all of the relevant parties. and that's what's trying to be cleaned up. And so in order to make sure that that is cleaned up and there's actually the give and take of conversation, as opposed to the caseworker simply creating a plan and passing that plan over to the relevant parties, to actually have the relevant parties participate in the conversation, I think is essential. And while I hear that that is the bill sponsor's desire, it's not making it on to the black letters on the page. And so I would ask for an amendment to be taken up. Thank you.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd first like to thank the sponsors, as I very much appreciate their intent to make sure we're protecting children, especially those in transitionary periods, because it is a hard time when children don't have a stable home, a loving home, or any kind of guidance. However, from looking at this bill, both in committee and now, there are quite a few flaws in here that I'm just not okay with, my district's not okay with, and honestly, none of us should be okay with. When you look at the Colorado Department of Human Services, it's a unique agency in the state because it's not only a state agency, but it also directs a lot of power to 64 different counties, hence the County Department of Human Services that our commissioners then get to oversee, sit on their boards, and they work a lot with the local matters. This is a great function of this department because the state puts a lot of power back to the locals. We love this. However, when we do bills like this, it takes away that local control in which this department was organized on and places a one-size-fits-all on all 64 counties. Those 64 counties now are not separate entities that can function to the best of their communities because, let's face it, communities in Denver and the children they're looking at there are going to have vastly different needs than children in rural areas and the needs and resources they have out that way. So why are we saying all of our children have to fit in a shoebox, a one-size-fits-all, and we're going to treat them with a rubber stamp saying you all have to do the exact same thing? This I have an issue with. My mom works for a county department of human services, and she coordinates with a lot of the local counties around our area. And I would like to point out that my local county departments of human services, I have 7 counties. None of them function 100% the same way because each county and community is different than the other. Now, our rural communities function better and more united out there than they would here in the Denver areas because of the needs. But I just want to point out that all counties are uniquely different, and we need to make sure we recognize that. So now let's look at the unfunded mandate portion of this. I know we just got hot off the press, or I guess it's kind of cold now because the paper's cooled down, but this lovely pink sheet, when we look at it, why are we looking at 2026, 2027 for when these funds are coming in? But we're putting a safety clause in as if this is going to go into effect this year or this next fiscal year. Can someone point those dots of, you all know by this point, it's no secret, I very much despise safety clauses because it tramples the voice of the people. And then I look at this fiscal note, and I love that it's going to push this off a little bit because we can't fund it this year. We don't have the need. We have the need, but we don't have the funds for it this year, so we're going to put it off. But if you're going to put something off, why do we have to ram it down the people's throats and say, you don't get 90 days to petition, you don't get 90 days per counties to look at this in the communities you know best, we're going to force this through, we're going to hurry up and wait, we're going to force this against the people without having any say, and then we're going to wait a year before the funds kick in anyways. So where does this make sense that we have a safety clause to hurry up and then wait for a fiscal note that doesn't go into place until the fiscal year of 2026, 27, instead of this fiscal year, which is 25, 26. I just would love to know where that connection is. Why is there a safety clause if we're derailing this? Why are we also putting a lot of these funds onto our county chapters? I can tell you why. Because of local control. Why are we putting more funds on our counties? Because then we come to them as a state and say, you want your own ordinance, you want your own authority, you're going to pay for it, but we're going to do an unfunded mandate by the state because we know better than your local jurisdiction. There are so many flaws in this that I would say, you know what, let's come to the table over the interim. Let's fully vet this out so we can get into a place for the intent that it's meant to be. I'm happy to come to the table. I'm happy to bring my rural voice, my counties to the table, my commissioners who know their county health departments the best, and let's fully vet this out so we have something that is golden next year and not something that is flawed that we have to fix in future years. I urge a no vote.
Representative Garcia Sander.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just constant communication with my counties, just to get feedback on what's going on. Hi, Jamie. So she said, if provisions outlined in HB 25-1097 are already comprehensively addressed within the Foster Care Bill of Rights, it does raise a question about the necessity of enacting a separate legislation on this topic. So just wondering if bill sponsors can address that for me, please. Thank you.
Representative Lott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm in contact with a number of foster families right now who have different thoughts about this. One of them saying, there are a lot of laws in place that don't get acted upon for several reasons. The staff are busy, there are not enough people, there's not enough funding, and laws don't really mean much in this arena because of such lack. In light of what was just shared about already these things being a part of the framework or the law, are we convinced that this will be implementable? Do we think that the counties will have what they need in order to actually have the staffing in order to implement it? Because this person's experience is saying it sounds good, but in truth, who could do it? Because their experience has been that the caseworkers are in and out, there's not enough staff, and so this won't actually happen. Do we have anything that says from the counties such that this actually will be possible to add to what they're already doing? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to, yeah, okay. So there's confidence within the bill sponsors that yes, this will be okay. We were told that the caseworker knows the children and the families, but my children had at least 5 caseworkers during their time in foster care. The last one that we met with in the roundtable discussion in which we were to hear all the good, bad, and ugly had just received the case. So again, I think that goes back, since I'm talking to you, Colorado, that goes back to the fact that we need to make sure that there is language in here that says that the placement folks are also consulted very specifically. Children are not the type priority, and all of those things sound good, but how to implement that when a child's needs get judged by those who barely know them? The foster families know kids to the degree they care and aren't in a crisis with the child. So many excellent families, yet the need for help isn't always available. Again, there is lack. Please include the foster parents, if able, to the conversation, to the making of the decisions. Also realize that a judge overrides these requirements all the time. They will state the law and say, but, and new plan pops out of their mouth. This is very common. Another person is asking, as relates to whether or not these transition plans are even possible, because in many instances there are emergency or immediate shifts. How does that work when it's like an immediate shift? Is there anything that it's accommodated in the bill? Do we know what page? Then I'll look at it. It's a time question. There's only so much time. I'll hand over the well while we're looking for the section. Thank you.
Representative Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have sat in on Health and Human Services on a couple of occasions, lovely group, but I'm not a permanent member of that committee. So the discussion today has been interesting to me just because I have seen some of the bills that have come through there, but because I haven't been as familiar with this. If you're looking at this from the outside, and I think that's what we have to try to caution ourselves, or really try to move ourselves to do from time to time, is to look at it from the outside. Because if there are some of us here in this chamber that aren't exactly on the same page because of late amendments that had arrived, or also because of a fiscal note that had just been reprinted, and then we're still hearing that the amendments had impacted the fiscal note to drop that number of hours that would be required from 4 to 2, still, I mean, that's a significant number. It's a difference between still $371,000, if I recall directly from the fiscal note, or $740,000 to the fiscal note. It's okay, I can speak up. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. I will try to project as well, so then that way, you're welcome. Was I not on? Okay, I'll get back to it. So I have concerns. I have concerns about the fact that there were amendments that were running late. I have concerns that those amendments directly impacted the fiscal note, which we received late. For somebody like me that has sat in occasionally but does not necessarily understand the details of this bill, I believe what makes the most sense, given the conversation, the confusion around it, Mr. Chair, I move that House Bill 251097 be returned to Health and Human Services Committee.
That is a proper motion. Is there discussion on the motion? A division has been called. The committee will stand in a brief recess. The committee will come back to order. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, I can tell you that we had a very robust discussion about this bill. We considered different amendments and we considered different points of view, and the committee voted on it. There is no need to refer this back to the Health and Human Services Committee, and I ask for a no vote on this motion.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In addition to the robust committee, the prime sponsor, who has over a decade experience in this, both lived and professional experience in this exact area, has been working on this bill since last summer. So I think there's been robust discussion. So we ask for a no vote on this motion and a yes on the bill.
Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We can have more robust conversations if we send it back to Health and Human Services.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of the fact that this involves not only Health and Human Services, but also the judicial system and the way that these things work, I actually move to make a substitute motion to send this instead of Health and Human Services back to Judiciary.
That is a proper motion. Representative Weinberg. We are now on the substitute motion for referring this bill back to Judiciary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, again, 2 amendments off the fly, and a whole fiscal note just dropped on the desk. I'm a little bit lost trying to catch up with this as well. I think the responsible thing to do would go back to Judiciary. Well, I would go back to committee, but Judiciary now, if that's what it is. And let's reassess this, take a look at it again, and make sure we come into the right place in this room. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion on the question before us, the Luck has moved to move this back to Judiciary. The question before us is to refer this bill back to Judiciary. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The noes have it. Back to the question for sending this to Health and Human Services. A division has been called. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of amendment to refer this to Health and Human Services. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please sit and remain seated. All those in favor of the amendment, please stand and remain standing in one place or raise your hand to keep it raised until the count is taken. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please rise. Please be seated. All those opposed to the motion, please rise. The motion is lost. To the bill, Representative Weinberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I rise today in opposition of House Bill 1097. Let me begin by saying that I appreciate the intent behind this bill. We all want stability for children in out of home placements. No one disputes the abrupt or traumatic moves can negatively impact a child's well-being. But what this bill proposes is not a solution. It's another bureaucratic layer that looks good on paper but will fail our kids in practice. 1097 would mandate a one-size-fits-all placement transition plan for every single movement between homes, no matter how urgent or straightforward the case. It creates a statewide template, multiple communication frameworks, timeline requirements, post-transition reports, and yet somehow this is to be implemented within existing resources? I don't know if anybody's taken a hint, but we have no money. Let's be honest, there are no existing resources here. Our county human services departments are already overwhelmed. I've talked to multiple counties, including my own, about this, and they're saying there's no ways they can take on the load. We're asking caseworkers, most of whom are juggling 20, 30, even 40 active cases, to now develop, document, and track compliance on a complex transition plan every time a child moves. That's time they're not spending actually working with the child. That's time they're not spending working on what they need to do in their departments. This bill takes social workers off the front lines and puts them back behind a computer. The hard truth is no one wants to say out loud is sometimes placement changes happen fast, because they have to. Maybe the child is unsafe, maybe the foster parent has reached a breaking point, maybe it's a medical emergency. This bill adds red tape to moments that demand responsiveness. Yes, it allows for an alternative timeline, but we all know how this plays out. When everything required documentation and pre-approval, urgency gets tangled in bureaucracy and red tape. Let's also consider the families. We're talking about certified foster parents, kinship providers, and non-certified relatives, many of whom step up in times of crisis. Now they'll be expected to participate in mandatory communications, optional trainings, and share information in ways that open the door to legal conflict and privacy concerns. This bill prioritizes process over the people it intends to help. I have to ask, where's the accountability? We're putting counties on the hook to implement these plans, but there's no real oversight mechanism. Just check a box in the trail system and move on. What we end up with is paperwork that gives us the illusion of progress while leaving the real work undone. Colleagues, I believe we should support children in transition, but not by creating rigid new mandates that burden caseworkers, complicates urgent decisions, and imposes process where flexibility is needed most. Let's trust our professionals. Let's support our counties, and most importantly, let's not pass legislation that feels good while doing harm. I want to stress the fact that we've had 2 amendments get dropped on all of us on the floor and a brand new fiscal note.
Members, please proceed, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brand new fiscal note that I am yet to assess. When we have a budgetary crisis in the state of Colorado, we need to take our time and do this slowly. So please, let's give it a minute, push this bill out for a sec, let's understand what's truly going to happen and what kind of fiscal impact to our state is going to occur. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1097. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. 1097 is adopted. The ayes have it. Mr. Sheville, please read the title of House Bill 1195.
House Bill 1195 by Representatives Johnson and Martinez, also Senators Mullica and Baisley, concerning the ability of a first responder or the spouse of a first responder to request that the address in their voter registration records maintained by the county clerk and recorder or the Secretary of State be kept confidential.
Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you, sir.
I move House Bill 1195 and the State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee report.
That is a proper motion. To the committee report.
We'll start with the State Civic, Military, Veterans Affairs Committee report. We are asking to reject this report because we also added in an amendment in appropriations that covers what we have, and we don't want a settled question. So we are asking for a no vote on the State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee report.
Just 1 second. So we can't entertain them as separate motions? Okay. Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I withdraw my motion for the State Civic, Veterans, and Military Affairs report, and I move the appropriations report. We are requesting both the appropriations report and the State Civic, Veterans, and Military Affairs. We are requesting an aye vote on the...
1 second, Representative Martinez. Let's get clear on the motion. Members, please pay attention. This is an unusual motion. Before seconds. Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I withdraw all previous motions. I would now like to move the State Civic, Veterans, Military Affairs, and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the to the Appropriations Committee report. Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are requesting an aye vote for the Appropriations report. We added an amendment on there that zeroes out our fiscal notes, and we are requesting an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the State Civic, Veterans, and Military Affairs Committee report. Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are requesting a no vote on the State Civic, Veterans, and Military Affairs report because the amendment we put on in appropriations cancels out what we had initially put on in the State Civic, Veterans, Military Affairs, and that it settles it, and we do not want to have a settled question, so we ask for a no vote on the State Civic, Veterans, and Military Affairs Committee report.
The question before us is the adoption of the State Civic, Veterans, and Military Affairs Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The committee report fails. To the bill, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 1195 offers protection and peace of mind for those who selflessly keep our community safe and serve us. What we did with this bill, in works with the Secretary of State's Department and our clerks and recorders, is make sure we're using prior existing statute to use the processes that we already have in place. When we are looking at first responders, they are more likely to be harassed or harmed due to the nature of their jobs, often leaving them feeling unsafe to put any public information out there. And I've heard it countless times, not just the ride-alongs in my district, but the ride-alongs I've done across the state, that many of them just don't vote because they don't want their information to be out there. When looking into this issue further, I saw that we do have a confidential voter status already. However, they have to swear or affirm that they feel that they're in immediate danger and that their family is in immediate danger. Well, first responders don't want to do an oath lightly, and if they don't feel that they're in immediate danger, but their job can put them in danger at a moment's notice due to a call that they respond to, it puts them in a weird situation. And because they don't want to risk perjury by doing an oath they don't feel is justified in the moment, but could be justified on their next call or their next shift, it leaves them feeling very uncomfortable. What this does is creates a new subcategory that they can go then and do an oath saying that they're a first responder or the spouse of a first responder, and because of the nature of their job, feel unsafe when they vote having their information being out there. So this is a very common sense bill to allow for our first responders to feel safe in doing their civil duties to vote while also protecting our communities, and I strongly urge a yes vote.
Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a good bill for our first responders, those that are keeping our communities safe. We want to show that we are supportive of them and want to make sure that we are doing what we can to protect them. So I will, in the words of my esteemed former colleague, don't talk too much, good bill, vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1195. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is adopted. Mr. Shebo, please read the title of House Bill 1105.
House Bill 1105 by Representative Camacho, concerning an adjustment to the total employer contribution rate of the Denver Public School Division of the Public Employees Retirement Association in connection with the equalization status of the association's Denver Public Schools Division with the association school division as required by the merger of the Denver Public Schools retirement system with the association.
Thank you, Mr. Shebo. Representative Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1105 and the committee report.
To the Finance Committee report. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move Amendment L005 to the committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion. One moment. That is displayed. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amendment L005 amends the Finance Committee report. It excludes Denver Public Schools from direct distribution for a 5-year period. This amendment comes at the request of, or through continued stakeholding with all the parties that have an interest, and we ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of L5 to the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No? The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. To the bill, to the committee report, my apologies.
Mr. Chair, I move Amendment L006 to the Finance Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion. One moment. That is displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a product of the stakeholding process. Amendment L006 excludes the DPS Schools Division from the auto-adjust provision, and we ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of L6 to the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. To the committee report.
Mr. Chair, we request a yes vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Finance Committee report to House Bill 1105. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill addresses a long-standing financial imbalance stemming from DPS's 2009 merger into PARA. At that time, DPS fully funded its pension liabilities, unlike other divisions, and has since contributed over $1 billion more necessary to higher employment contribution rates. An independent analysis confirmed that DPS could reduce its contribution rates by over 10% and still remain fully funded. House Bill 251105 proposes a modest 3% reduction, ensuring fairness while keeping the fund financially strong. The savings won't go into a black hole. They will be reinvested directly into educator pay, raising average teacher salary and staff by over $2,500. This is smart, responsible fix for no negative impact on Para's stability. Let's support educators and do the right thing by DPS, and I urge a yes vote on House Bill 1105.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
My concern is this. We have a commitment in this chamber to the degree of $225 million for the purpose of keeping Para whole. $225 million a year. And when I see that Para is not firmly behind this bill whatsoever, unless something's changed in this last week, it scares me to death. Because for us to be messing with these contributions when we know we have an unfunded liability right now worries me at length. And for one group that I respect, but I've got school districts and school teachers as well, and I realize this one's a little different because it came into Para after our other districts, but we cannot afford to put Para any further behind whatsoever. And in a year like we're facing right now with a market that just has dropped 10% in the last 2 days, if not more, it's even more dangerous to be working on these changes. So I know for me to even consider this, I want to see a letter from Para that says they're totally behind this change. Thank you.
AML Bacon.
Thank you. We wouldn't expect less from our dear colleague. I will say that the conversation that we've been having as Denver Public Schools, I joined this bill as a member of the board who had an opportunity 5 years ago to true up, but we did not. COVID was happening. In 2009, when we negotiated to make, quite frankly, the Para payouts portable for DPS teachers, that's what happened. In 2009, DPS created an agreement that it would fully merge with schools by 2039. And part of that deal was that every 5 years, we would do independent, right, and the actuarial reports to say if there's an opportunity to true up or save without impact, that we should be able to do that. And that's what the actuarial report showed. It showed that we could cut as much as 10%, but we decided to not go that high just to be able to provide buffer, but also to put a little bit more money back into the pockets of our teachers. And so the actuarial report verified, did say we could go as high as 10%, but we did not. The other thing that we heard in committee, the reason why I bring this up is because when we heard from the Para board representatives, they were like, anything that could tamper, with the dollars we oppose. However, they did not doubt what the actuarial report said, and our concern was, as a matter of the deal that we made in 2009, if you are saying that any change you'll be opposed to, then we said that then maybe we questioned, like, did we do good faith negotiation in 2009? Because the whole point was every 5 years we're supposed to reevaluate, but if you feel like any change would always be a no, then, so we really did question that. And so that's why it kind of was a little bit of a, what's the word? It was a little bit tense, but you can kind of see in faces what that means. However, we were working on these amendments, and the co-prime will also share about that in regards to where Para is now as well.
Representative Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to my colleague from the Western Slope for his concern, and I share it as well. I think it is really important to understand that Denver Public Schools teachers have paid more than $1 billion, more than any other member of the schools division. They are not the source of the unfunded issues in that division. Be that aside, we have continued to work with our stakeholders to make sure that everyone is comfortable with this. Amendment L005, which amended the committee report, specifically excludes Denver Public Schools' right to a contribution from the state and gives it to the other members of the school division just to shore up the fact that the Para can continue to stay solvent for 5 years until the next true-up period. Amendment L006 excludes them from the auto-adjust provision. These two amendments, which I fully expect, once Para has a chance to fully review these, but we made these in consultation with them, but admittedly, they just went final. I do expect you to get that letter, because we are following through with our commitment to make sure that the broader Para remains solvent, and we are doing right by our Denver public school teachers. So for that, I would urge a yes vote.
Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just so I understand, the bill as introduced, it was really 2 paragraphs, right? It was the pros plus a table. The idea being that it's been 5 years, and so now we're truing up based off of whatever was passed in 2020. And so then this table would be updated again in 2030. Is that basically what is going on? Plus whatever the amendments are, that's a separate conversation.
Representative Camacho.
That is wrong. There has not been a true-up for almost 10 years, because 5 years ago was the COVID year. So we have continued to see this imbalance by Denver public school teachers, which is how you get to the result of paying more than $1 billion in your fair share.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't mean to ask this question to antagonize you at all. I hope you understand my concern is, and everybody's concern here needs to be similar, that we have an unfunded liability to the tune of $225 million that takes us well into 2048, I believe, before we can bring this whole. Assuming returns can average 7.25% as they have over these last 20 years. So please don't take, I did not accuse you that DPS caused this problem. This was caused by a variety of situations over the last many years. I just want to make sure that Para is comfortable with your 2 amendments, and I apologize. One was very long, and it's hard to read it up there, so I promised I could read it. But it would be good to hear from the Para board that they are in concert with this. I would very much appreciate that.
Representative Camacho.
And I'd like to thank my colleague from the Western Slope. I did not take it that way. I just feel very passionate about this issue. And I think if you have taken an oath to serve your constituents, we all care about Para. We all care about people collecting from Para. And I personally would not put my name on a bill that would do anything to affect that. And in contrast, we've actually gone to great lengths through these amendments to make sure that other divisions of Para are shored up by this action. And we can still do right by Denver Public Schools. And I will commit to colleagues in this room, my colleague from the Western Slope, that the sponsors of this bill and the Senate sponsors of this bill all speak with a unified voice, that we are continuing to work to make sure that everyone feels comfortable as this bill moves forward.
Madam Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, and I'd just like to echo the sentiments and just be clear of what it is that we're trying to balance. Denver Public Schools, as the state's largest district, had a set of circumstances that were different than any other, and we want to get to a place that we can all be able to support the schools division. However, what we're talking about right now are contributions in, not necessarily, the impact of paying out is already committed. So one, let's just be clear on that. And so at the end of the day, what we're saying is the road from 2009 to 2039 to be able to be sure DPS is paying in its fair share so that schools can operate. We were allowed per statute to just readjust the numbers as we go. And again, I want to reiterate, the money that's going in is being paid from the employer, but also more importantly, the employees. And so if there's any way to ensure that we will hit the targets that we all agreed on in 2039, when employees can get some dollars back, and as much as we've all been talking about it, anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a year is incredibly important for our employees. We have done the math. And so we want to be, deferential to the Para board and saying, look, they're concerned about if you change anything, what could the outcome be, right? But what they didn't say is that it would harm, and I want to be clear about that. So to give them credit, it is their fiduciary duty to vet to see if anything could change, right? The liabilities, but they did not say that it would, and that's, again, why we had the actuarial report. But what the amendments also said is, because I want to point out, as a board, we have not done a true-up. We've only done one since 2009. We're asking to do this one, and we're going to leave it alone. And so I think what's really important is to also understand, again, this is not committed funds present. It does not impact the committed paying out funds. That's not what this side of the payment does. I want folks to understand who we're talking about will save. In fact, we negotiated that savings would go to teachers. That's important to us. We pushed the district to create an MOU, and that's why our bargaining unit came to testify, because they were concerned that we saved money and they didn't know where it was going to go. So that's also important for you all to know, that this is a way to help better support our teachers in this budget climate. We cannot mill levy our way out of a lot of these issues, and so this is something that could provide dollars without upsetting the apple cart. So we do want to let you know, also want to share the commitment that we are concerned about the same things, and we're willing to work towards that. We are doing this with the purpose of supporting our educators within the confines of the ability to do that. So also just wanted you to hear what our motivations were for the bill.
Representative Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the only thing I missed in my earlier statement is that under this bill, DPS will still be fully funded more than a decade before any other participant in the school division. Like, this bill does not affect DPS's ability to meet the mandated targets. We will still be on time. We're giving relief to teachers and staff in the interim.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have multiple school districts, and I am inclined to be supportive of your bill. There was a commitment made by the state. It's honoring that commitment. What I need help with is being able to articulate to my school districts how this relates to their teachers paying. So if you could help me understand how to communicate that, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Camacho.
Mr. Chair, I would direct my colleague from Southern Colorado to look at Amendment 5. DPS is specifically giving up its contributions for other school districts. It will not affect other school districts' pay, but it will shore up their liabilities to para by foregoing theirs for the next 5 years and giving them to other schools across the state.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. I will take a look at them. As was stated by my other colleague, I didn't have a chance to read them before all of that was done. Bottom line, DPS teacher, are they going to pay the same, more, less? If this bill passes, than a teacher in another school district? Do we have that kind of understanding such that this is made personal?
Representative Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank my colleague from Southern Colorado. This bill is focused on Denver public school teachers, so we did not expand or do analysis of how every teacher across the state would be impacted by this, because simply it was beyond the scope of this bill. We know through our amendments, we are shoring up the books for other schools, and we're also doing right by a group of folks that have over-contributed by about $1 billion, which I think should not be lost in this conversation.
Representative Garcia Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that last comment, Representative Camacho, sorry. I am a para employee and a para retiree, and for the last 25 years, I have been concerned that para isn't going to be solvent because, as we know, we always hear the sky is falling and there's not going to be money for Social Security or para. And listening to our caucus members' comments from the JBC, that's really, I guess, my big question that hangs over is, para, do we have representation from para that was stakeholdered with this, and do we have the blessing of the board from para saying, yes, this actually doesn't create any insolvency down the road? For me, touching anything that para takes in and puts out is causing some kind of an imbalance. I want to make sure that it's not an imbalance to the detriment of para retirees down the road. We already know that it's a huge liability in our state as far as the mandate for retirement payout for para employees and retirees. So I really would like the assurance from para that this is not going to affect the imbalance, and until that happens, I'm going to be a respectful no on this, but I really would like the assurance so that we can know that para is not going to be insolvent by this. And again, it really has to do more with the less contributions that go into it is going to create an imbalance in my world. But I want that reassurance. Thank you.
Representative Camacho. Would you like to go, Rep. Herzog? Representative Herzog, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in some of the questions that came up in committee, these were very specific questions that I asked. And we had a couple of folks from para that were there. We had one that was the CEO of para, and then we had Secure Para that was there. And the one very specific question that I asked is, what is the impact to current retirees? Will they lose money? And that answer was no. Now, my understanding with the amendments and how things have been pushed out, that answer is still no, because that was our primary concern in committee is, what is that impact, both current retirees and future retirees? We're dealing with those two groups that were there. That question in committee, or that answer in committee, I should say, was that there will not be a negative impact to current retirees. And my understanding is right now with the amendments and things being deferred out is there now will be no impact to future retirees, and based upon the original calculations. And we're right now confirming with para, but from the Secure Para, that is what they stated both in committee and we're texting right now. So that was that answer there. Thank you.
Representative Camacho.
And I'd like to thank my colleague for his comments, and I'd also like to respond to my colleague from Northern Colorado. Yes, there's an actuarial study that says DPS could reduce their contributions by 10% and still meet all their targets and have no impact on para. We are not anywhere close to 10%. I think if you look at the bill, it's about 3%, and that 3% is made up of 2.2% reduction from para and then a 0.8, I believe, from DPS already being fully funded with their health care trust fund, reducing their contributions there. So that's how we make up the 3%. So to para, it's really only 2.2, I believe, is the number. I can get more specifics on that, but it's nowhere close to the 10% that the actuarial study said we could get to.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to bug you guys on this, but this is such an important topic. I'll come back to the calculation that my colleague just stated, but I wonder if you'd spend a little bit of time, because these amendments are fairly significant. So 005, in particular after July 2030, direct distribution to local government division is carved out. And prior to that, it's the Denver Public Schools and local government division. Could we get an explanation as to why they're carved out of the direct distribution? And my second would be a comment. Again, I have the original bill that we had this morning, but it went from a 10% employer contribution to a 7.4%. That's far greater than 10%. That's a 24% change. Actually, it's a 26% change. 2.6 divided by 10 is 26%. So am I missing something here in that calculation? Because you were pretty emphatic that it was not 10%. If it was 10%, it would be no less than 9.0, not 7.4. So again, an explanation about the direct distribution and that calculation, which I'm not getting the same calculation.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1105. All those in favor of adoption, please say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is adopted. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of House Bill 1062.
House Bill 1062 by Representatives Armagost and Duran, also Senator Hendrickson, concerning the penalty for theft of firearms.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1062 and the Judiciary and Appropriations Report.
To the Judiciary Committee report.
And
My apologies. I take that back to the Appropriations Committee report.
In Appropriations, we ran a J amendment to appropriate funds to the Judicial Department, and I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the Judiciary Committee report. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In Judiciary, we ran an amendment to remove the Class 5 felony, so any theft of a firearm is a Class 6 felony, and I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So making a theft of firearms a Class 6 felony in Colorado is beneficial for several reasons, particularly from a public safety and crime prevention perspective. We can talk about some of the advantages. One being deterrence of gun theft. Elevating the theft of firearms to a Class 6 felony, regardless of the firearm's monetary value, could deter potential thieves. In Colorado, theft penalties are typically tied to the value of a stolen item, ranging from petty offenses for items under $300 to higher felony cases for more valuable property. By setting a consistent felony classification for firearm theft, the state signals that stealing guns carries a significant consequence. Reducing gun violence, number 2. Stolen firearms often end up in the hands of individuals who cannot legally purchase firearms, such as felons or minors, and are frequently used in violent crimes. By imposing stricter penalties, Colorado's could reduce the circulation of stolen guns in illegal markets, potentially lowering rates of gun-related violence. Advocates argue that the severity of a firearm's potential misuse justifies treating its theft more seriously than other property crimes. 3, addressing a specific problem. Data suggests firearm theft is a growing issue in Colorado. For instance, gun thefts, especially from vehicles, have reportedly risen significantly in recent years. A uniform felony classification could target this trend directly, providing law enforcement and prosecutors with a stronger tool to address a crime that has broader societal impacts compared to theft of other items. Number 4, consistency in sentencing. Under prior Colorado law, the penalty for stealing a firearm depended on its value, meaning a cheap gun or handgun only result in petty or misdemeanor charges. Making it a Class 6 felony ensures consistent punishment regardless of the firearm's price, reflecting the inherent danger it poses rather than its market worth. This could also simplify prosecution by removing the need to prove value in court. Number 5, support from stakeholders, law enforcement, district attorneys, even some gun rights activists have supported this kind of measure, arguing that it protects communities and lawful gun owners alike. Stolen guns often victimize responsible owners, and harsher penalties might encourage better storage practices and indirectly reducing theft opportunities. Lastly, broader crime prevention. Firearm theft is often linked to other felonies like burglary, armed robbery, and the like. A felony charge for the gun theft itself could lead to longer sentences or additional leverage in plea deals, potentially disrupting criminal networks and keeping repeat offenders off the streets longer. I encourage a yes vote.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So under current law, the penalty for the theft of an item, except an automobile, is based on the value of the item. Hence, the theft of a $250 firearm has the same penalty, petty offense, maximum of 10 days in jail, and or $750 fine, a misdemeanor, as a $600 television does. But a stolen firearm has far more dangerous consequences for the communities than the stolen television. Stolen firearms are generally directly headed into the criminal market and are all frequently end up in the hands of youth and other prohibited individuals. The stolen firearms market is one of the major means of such persons to circumvent Colorado's background checks. This bill changes the penalty for a stolen firearm to be a Class 6 felony, regardless of the value of the firearm. Subsequently, firearm thefts or the theft of multiple firearms in one event will each be a Class 5 felony. This bill is a top priority for our constituents in our communities and has been asked for by many of them, public safety being #1 concern. According to our ARC Insights poll that sampled 603 registered Colorado voters between February 4th and February 5th, the results showed strong support for harsher penalties on criminals who steal firearms, and I ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1062. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is adopted. Madam Majority Leader,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
the committee will rise and report.
House will come back to order. Mr. Shebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report is under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1062 is amended, 1097 is amended, 1105 is amended, and 1195 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered and engrossed and placed on the calendar for third and final passage. House Bill 1174 laid over until April 8th, 2025.
Representative Clifford. Members, you have heard the motion. There are no amendments at the desk. The question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Soper, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Soper votes no. Representatives Gonzalez, Kelty, and Bradley. Representative Carter. Representatives Bradley and Kelty are excused. With 40 aye, 20 no, and 5 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Majority Leader Duran.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till Tuesday, April 8th, 2025.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Announcements and introductions. Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Colleagues, I have this really wonderful announcement that I want to make to you today. In the West Foyer, we have End Human Trafficking presentation going up downstairs, and there's also food. It goes until 2 today. So join us for a human trafficking awareness event to learn, take action, and support survivors. Hear from powerful speakers, connect with local organizations, and be part of the solution. Together, we can make it stop. Please join us in the West Foyer, April 7th, which is today, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So the event is going on right now. Please go down there and show your support. It means a lot. Thank you so much. And there's food. Did I say there's food? Yes.
Rep. Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Today, the House Finance Committee will be meeting for a long day. We will hear House Bill 1262, House Bill 1302, House Joint Resolution 1023, House Bill 1292, 1303, 1214, and 1268 in that order. Thank you.
Rep. Lukens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. The House Education Committee will be meeting in the old State Library, so in a different room, at 1:30 to hear House Bill 1320.
Rep. Froelich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I don't believe they're here anymore, but the Joe Shoemaker School was here, and welcome and hi.
Rep. Wilford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. The State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee will meet at 1:30 p.m. in LSBA to hear House Bill 1191, House Bill 1319, House Bill 1315, House Concurrent Resolution 1002, and House Bill 1100. Thank you.
Rep. Hamrick.
Hello, members. Please welcome Koyak into the building. We had a lot of those amazing youth along the sides today on the House floor. Just a little bit about Koyak. Koyak, the Colorado Youth Advisory Council, started in 2008, and its mission is to examine, evaluate, and discuss the issues, interests, and needs affecting Colorado youth now and in the future, and to formally advise and make recommendations to elected officials regarding those issues. I want to thank all of you that came up and greeted them. It really meant a lot to them. Koyak is 40 members. They represent 35 Senate districts in the state, and there's one voting member representing the Ute and Mountain Ute tribes, and one voting member representing the Southern Ute Indian tribe as well. And so this is a great group that has really suggested a lot of really great bills that have gone through and really helped our youth and our families. I also want to make a report from the staff. So if you need printing and you're asking Jody to print something, you need to give her 24 to 48 hours. Everyone's really, really busy around here. And so again, if you need house services to print something for you, really give them 24 to 48 hours to do that, and they will do it. But don't, your emergency does not mean it's their emergency, all right? So thank you.
Thanks, Rep. Hamrick. Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker
And
Pro
Representative
Tem.
Hartsook.
It's an honor to serve with you.
Honor to serve with you, sir.
For the record, I did sign up for this. So the kids that were in the gallery today, they're out in the Capitol, but we have Purple Up Day that we have youth from Buckley Space Force Base, Schriever Air Force Base, and the Colorado National Guard here. So if you see them around the Capitol, just say hello and welcome to the state.
Rep. Hartsook.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And I'm honored up here with my colleague. We've done this for the last 3 years in a row. I was just at Buckley on Saturday. I mean, this is a great month for the kids. This recognizes the kids in the military, both on the base, off the bases, in schools, and they really enjoy this. So if you see them, give them a thumbs up and a high five and tell them thank you.
Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I would like to invite everybody to the Bible study tomorrow morning in room 109. Breakfast is served, and the book we're working through is Philippians, and I'm sure that we would love to have you there. Thank you.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more time, we have a special announcement.
Representative Rutenow.
I think I speak for the three of us when I say that if you're not a gator, you're gator bait. And that's all I'll say for now.
So today is Gator Day, and we have a representative upstairs, so.
We're good. We're good. Yep, that's it. Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.